The sun beat down on the old town square, where the weekend yard sale was in full swing. Tents lined the cobbled streets, their owners peddling antiques and trinkets of all kinds. As the townsfolk meandered through the aisles, the buzz of conversation mingled with the soft notes of a distant violin. Amid the array of time-worn furniture and faded clothes, a peculiar item caught my eye. It was a synthetic hand resting atop an ornate velvet cushion, almost as if it were the prized possession of this particular stall. Unlike the other relics, this hand wasn't old-fashioned or antiquated. In fact, it looked shockingly modern, a striking contrast against the aged items surrounding it. Crafted with meticulous precision, it was eerily lifelike, and I could see individual pores on the skin. But what truly drew me in were the intricate symbols etched into its surface. They snaked around the fingers and palm in an unfamiliar language, exuding an ancient aura. The symbols seemed to shimmer ever so slightly, an effect that was both mesmerizing and unsettling. Quite a find, isn't it? A frail voice interrupted my inspection. I looked up to find an elderly gentleman, his gaze locked onto the hand, a nostalgic smile playing on his lips. "It's unique," I commented, still entranced. "How much is it?" "A mere $1, he replied, his eyes never leaving the hand. Baffled by the incongruity of the price and its apparent value, I asked, "Why so cheap?" The old man sighed, the weight of countless memories pressing down on him. "This hand holds many tales, some beautiful, some tragic. But every story has its end. Now it's time for it to find a new chapter. Just promise me one thing," he said, locking eyes with me, the joviality gone from his face, replaced with an intensity that took me aback. "Never wear it at midnight." Curiosity piqued, I handed over $1, securing my ownership of the synthetic hand. As I left the stall, I couldn't shake off the old man's words. They were a harbinger of the spectral odyssey that awaited me. Upon returning home, I placed the hand on the coffee table in the center of my living room. There was something captivating about it, an inexplicable allure that made it impossible to ignore. Despite the old man's cryptic words, my skeptical nature made me dismiss them as mere theatrics. That evening, a storm rolled in. Lightning illuminated the room in bursts, casting eerie shadows on the walls while thunder rumbled in the distance. The ambience was a fitting backdrop for the hand's mysteries. Sitting on the couch, I found my gaze fixated on the symbols, their unknown meanings intriguing my sense of curiosity. On a whim, I decided to try the hand on. As I slid my hand into the synthetic one, I felt a strange warmth emanating from it, accompanied by a faint vibration. It felt alive, its pulse synchronizing with mine. The room darkened momentarily as a cloud masked the moon outside, and in that split second of darkness I heard a voice, soft and distant. "Can you feel me?" Startled, I pulled my hand out of the synthetic appendage, scanning the room, trying to identify the source. "Who's there?" I called out. Silence. I contemplated the possibility of it being a trick of the mind, an illusion crafted by the stormy night and the mystique of the hand. Yet a voice deep within whispered that there was more to it, a connection, obscure and ancient, waiting to be explored. Pushing aside my apprehension, I once again placed my hand inside the synthetic one. This time the sensation was more profound. The room seemed to fade away, replaced by fleeting images and memories not my own. Glimpses of old towns, the laughter of children playing, the scent of fresh-baked bread and whispered secrets shared under a canopy of stars. As I tried to make sense of these images, the voice returned, clearer this time. "You're different. You can hear me, can't you?" Swallowing my fear, I responded, "Yes, I can. Who are you?" There was a moment of silence before the voice whispered, "My name is Samuel." And thus the bond was formed, a link between the living and a soul lost in time, bridged by a hand etched with symbols of an age long gone. Every night, as the cloak of darkness enveloped my room, I felt an irresistible urge to don the synthetic hand. It was no longer just an artifact. It was a siren, luring me into its enigmatic depths. One particularly still night, as I gingerly slid my hand into its synthetic counterpart, the room's temperature dropped. The eerie silence was pierced by a cacophony of whispers, each more desperate than the last, like a multitude of souls trapped in an endless void. "I can see you," a voice emerged from the chaos, slightly clearer than the rest. Startled, I tried to pull my hand free, but it was as if the synthetic grip had melded with my own flesh. Panic surged through me. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice quivering. "I am Samuel," the voice replied, a somber tone undercutting his words. "But I am not alone. This hand, it's a nexus, a convergence point for countless lost souls, each vying for a moment of contact, a glimmer of the world they once knew. I felt a chill run down my spine. Why are they all here? Samuel hesitated, the weight of eons bearing down on him. This hand, it's both a beacon and a trap. We're drawn to it, ensnared by its pull. I was one of the first, ensnared by its promise, but now it teems with voices, all desperate, all hungry for a touch of the living. As he spoke, I could sense the other presences, their despair and yearning palpable. Shadows began to dance on the walls, forming ghastly silhouettes that flickered and merged, creating a tapestry of torment. Night after night, my sleep was plagued with nightmares. Horrific visions of faces, twisted in anguish, reached out to me from the abyss, their voices a never-ending echo of pain and regret. Each dawn, I'd wake up drenched in sweat, the hand's cold grip still fresh in my memory. Samuel's voice became a recurring presence, a guide amidst the storm of lost souls. "You must find a way to release us," he implored one fateful night. "This existence, it's an endless cycle of torment. The hand, it must be unmade." The gravity of my situation became all too clear. The hand was no longer just a conduit. It was a prison. And I, unwittingly, had become its jailer. The days blurred into nights as the weight of countless souls bore down on me. Each voice, each shadow, each nightmare, a testament to the hand's insidious power. The quest to unbind these souls and free myself from this haunting became an obsession, a journey fraught with terror, mystery, and an ever-looming suspense. The haunting had taken a toll on my health and sanity. Dark circles framed my eyes, and every creak of the floorboard sent my heart racing. The once captivating allure of the hand had now turned into a waking nightmare, and I was desperate to end its malevolent grip on my life. With each passing day, Samuel's whispers grew more frantic. "Time is running out," he warned. "The barrier between our realms weakens. If the hand isn't dealt with soon, they'll spill out into your world." After the tumultuous nights, a deceptive calm settled over my home. While the synthetic hand no longer beckoned lost souls, the relentless grip it once had on me seemed to linger. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt a cold touch tracing my skin, and my dreams were saturated with vivid memories of people I'd never met, lives that weren't my own. A particular dream recurred with unnerving regularity. I was standing in my living room, but it wasn't as I knew it. The furniture was aged, the walls adorned with dated portraits, and amidst it all stood Samuel, not as a voice or an apparition, but as a living, breathing person. He was fervently etching the final symbols onto the hand, whispering incantations. Eleanor, a beautiful woman with sorrowful eyes, stood by him, watching with a mix of hope and trepidation. Each time I'd wake up from this dream, I felt an overwhelming sense of grief, and soon my home began reflecting this sorrow from the past. I'd hear soft sobbing from the empty rooms. The piano in the living room would play melancholic tunes on its own, and I'd frequently find the synthetic hand mysteriously placed near Samuel's portraits, which I had never owned or seen before. The lines between the past and present were blurring, and I realized that while the souls might have been freed from the synthetic hand, the house was still ensnared in the tormented memories of Samuel and Eleanor. I sought the counsel of local historians and paranormal experts. Through them, I learned about the tragedy that befell Samuel after Eleanor's untimely death. He was never the same, and became consumed with the idea of connecting with Eleanor, leading to the creation of the synthetic hand. To truly free myself and my home from these lingering shadows, I needed to uncover the rest of Samuel's story and find out what became of him after creating the synthetic hand. Only by understanding his fate, and perhaps reconciling it, could I hope to bring peace to the tormented spirits that still haunted my dreams and home. But as I delved deeper into this quest, the shadows grew darker and the boundary between the past and present became even more tenuous. What had I truly unleashed with the hand? And was I merely a pawn in a larger, more sinister game that spanned centuries? The chilling journey to unravel these mysteries had only just begun. The synthetic hand, despite being neutralized, remained a key to the past, with its strange symbols almost pulsating with latent energy. Remembering the whispers of the hundreds of lost souls, I grew increasingly convinced that the symbols were not mere decoration but a code, an intricate cipher waiting to be unraveled. Desperate for answers, I took the hand to Dr. Amelia Harrow, a renowned linguist and cryptanalyst with a penchant for the paranormal. Her office was a cacophony of ancient artifacts and modern equipment, a perfect blend of the old and the new. As she examined the hand under a magnifying glass, her brow furrowed in deep concentration. "It's an amalgamation," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "These symbols belong to various ancient languages, but their arrangement, it's deliberate, almost rhythmic." Over the next few days, Amelia and I pored over the symbols, cross-referencing them with ancient texts. It was painstaking work, filled with dead ends and frustration. But as the symbols began to give up their secrets, a pattern emerged. They told a story, Samuel's story. Amidst the coded symbols were instructions, a way to use the hand that Samuel had never completed. It was clear now that he hadn't merely wanted to communicate with Eleanor, but had hoped to bring her back, to bridge the chasm between life and death. The cipher revealed an unfinished ritual, one last step that Samuel had missed, perhaps due to his overwhelming grief or some external interference. But the most chilling discovery was a warning, encoded within the symbols. "Beware the guardian of the veil, it watches, it waits." Amelia, her scientific curiosity piqued, proposed a radical idea. What if we complete the ritual? It could give you the closure you need, and it might finally put to rest the spirits that haunt this artifact. I hesitated. The memories of the tormented souls, Samuel's whisper, and the relentless nightmares were still fresh. Yet there was an allure to the idea. Perhaps this was the key to breaking free from the hand's grip once and for all. But the warning loomed large in my mind. As night fell, we gathered the materials outlined in the cipher. The ritual would take place in my home, the epicenter of all the paranormal activity. The room was cast in an ethereal glow as candles flickered, casting long dancing shadows. We began reciting the incantations from the decoded symbols. The atmosphere grew dense, charged with anticipation. A cold wind blew from nowhere, extinguishing the candles. The synthetic hand glowed eerily, its symbols shining bright in the darkness. And then a guttural growl filled the room, and the very walls seemed to pulsate. From the shadows emerged a menacing entity, its form ever shifting, a guardian of the veil between worlds. We had awakened something ancient and protective, and it was not pleased. The realization hit me. Samuel had never completed the ritual, not out of ignorance but out of fear. The guardian had stopped him, protecting the delicate balance between life and death. Now, Amelia and I stood face to face with this guardian, and the fate of our souls hung in the balance. The final confrontation with the past was upon us, and there was no turning back. The room's temperature plummeted. Instead of the guardian retreating, its form became more defined, appearing less like a massive shadow and more human. The air grew thick with a sense of malevolence that felt ancient and raw. Samuel and Eleanor, rather than dissipating, began to contort grotesquely, their spectral features morphing in anguish. The surrounding spirits, instead of harmonizing, emitted ear-piercing screams of torment, their faces twisted in expressions of sheer terror. Amelia, panic evident in her eyes, shouted above the chaos, "The cipher! We got it wrong! We weren't supposed to bring them together!" As if echoing her realization, the guardian spoke, its voice a guttural rasp echoing with millennia of authority. "The veil is not meant to be manipulated. Balance must be restored." Before I could react, Amelia was lifted off the ground by an unseen force, her body suspended in midair. Her screams filled the room, only to be abruptly silenced as her form began to dissolve, her very essence absorbed by the synthetic hand. The spirits, now twisted and malevolent, began to advance, their ethereal forms becoming solid. Samuel, or the grotesque caricature he had become, reached out, his fingers elongating, aiming straight for my heart. The guardian watched impassively, a sentinel of the balance it vowed to protect. As the spirits closed in, the last thing I heard was its haunting proclamation, "The price of transgression is eternal entrapment." When the sun rose the next morning, the house stood silent. But inside, the once dormant synthetic hand now pulsed with new energy. Encased within it were two new souls, forever ensnared as a testament to the dangers of tampering with the veil between life and death. The artifact, a beacon of torment and a bridge to the afterlife, awaited its next victim, ever ready to unleash its horrors on those who dared to invoke its power. News of my sudden disappearance alongside Amelia spread like wildfire throughout the town. A police investigation ensued, turning up no leads. The house, which had been the epicenter of so much mystery and tragedy, became a focal point for local rumors. Some said it was cursed, while others whispered about restless spirits. And as the years passed, my once cherished home became an eyesore and a cautionary tale of the dangers lurking in the shadows. One day, many years later, a letter arrived at the doorstep of a young man named Ethan, my estranged nephew. The envelope bore a peculiar seal, one he vaguely recognized from childhood stories, a synthetic hand surrounded by cryptic symbols. Within, the letter announced that he was the sole heir to my estate, the old house, and everything inside. Curiosity piqued, Ethan decided to visit the house, despite the chilling tales he had heard growing up. The exterior was a shell of its former self, overtaken by nature, but the inside seemed eerily preserved. Dust blanketed every surface, but beneath it lay relics of a time long past, including photographs and personal belongings that hinted at happier times. As night fell, Ethan stumbled upon the synthetic hand. The artifact, despite the years, still radiated a peculiar energy. As he touched it, the room plunged into darkness and a cold wind enveloped him. The whispering voices from the past emerged, stories of love, loss, and transgressions. Sleep eluded Ethan that night as visions of Samuel, Eleanor, Amelia, and myself filled his dreams, recounting the tragic events that had befallen each of us. But among these memories was a new revelation, a way to free the trapped souls within the hand. Waking with a start, Ethan found himself surrounded by ghostly apparitions, all fixated on him. The Guardian's looming presence overshadowed the room, waiting to see what this new player would do. Determined, Ethan set out to correct the wrongs of the past, not out of a sense of familial duty, but a deep-rooted need to bring peace to the tormented souls. But in a world where the lines between reality and the supernatural are blurred, and where every action has a repercussion, Ethan was about to discover that sometimes the past should remain undisturbed. As he embarked on this treacherous journey, guided by cryptic messages and facing unspeakable horrors, Ethan realized that the synthetic hand's allure wasn't just its ability to connect with the dead, but its power to shape the destiny of the living. And with every twist and turn, the terrifying truth became clearer. The hand didn't just want to tell its story, it wanted to rewrite history itself. And so, as the Guardian watched, time seemed to fold upon itself, and Ethan was thrust into a nightmarish loop, reliving the horrors of the past and witnessing firsthand the fates of all who had come before him. Would he be another soul trapped within the synthetic hand, or could he find a way to break the cycle and lay the restless spirits to rest once and for all? Only time would tell. Within the cyclical nightmare, Ethan found himself at various points in the house's twisted history. He watched from the shadows as Samuel and Eleanor's love story unfolded, only to descend into tragedy. He was there when I first laid my hands on the cursed artifact and felt Amelia's hope as she tried to decode its mysteries. But each time the cycle seemed to reach its climax. With the Guardian's intervention and the inevitable entrapment of another soul, Ethan would be yanked back, forced to start over. It was a torturous loop, an endless maze with no apparent exit. However, as the cycles progressed, Ethan began to notice discrepancies, small changes in events that didn't align with the narratives he had witnessed earlier. A whisper here, a misplaced item there. It was as if the fabric of this time loop was slowly unraveling, becoming frayed at the edges. Using these discrepancies to his advantage, Ethan began to subtly interfere, leaving notes for Samuel, moving the synthetic hand to different locations, even trying to warn Amelia and me about the impending doom. His interventions, though initially seeming futile, began to create ripples, slowly altering the course of events. One particular loop felt distinctly different. As Ethan watched, Samuel, armed with a note Ethan had penned, avoided using the hand entirely, hiding it in the house's foundations. This small act set off a chain reaction, changing the trajectory of everyone involved. The Guardian, sensing the disruption, grew more agitated, its form constantly shifting and distorting. But even as the narrative began to change, Ethan found himself trapped, a prisoner of the synthetic hand's machinations. With each successful intervention, the Guardian's wrath grew, and Ethan's own reality began to disintegrate. Memories of his life before the house faded, replaced by the countless iterations of tragedy he had witnessed. Realizing the grave danger he was in, Ethan devised a final plan. Using the knowledge he had gained from the countless loops, he attempted to destroy the synthetic hand entirely. As he set the artifact aflame, the house shook violently and the Guardian let out a deafening roar. The inferno raged, consuming the synthetic hand and threatening to bring the entire house down with it. The spirits, previously trapped within the hand, surged forth, a maelstrom of lost souls and distorted memories. They circled Ethan, their forms flickering between rage and gratitude. Amid the chaos, the Guardian, weakened and disoriented by the fire, lunged at Ethan. But as it did, the spirits intervened, forming a protective barrier around him. Samuel and Eleanor, now united in their spectral forms, led the charge, channeling the collective energy of the souls to repel the Guardian. The battle between the Guardian and the spirits was a spectacle of supernatural fury. The very foundations of the house shook, windows shattered, and the walls seemed to bleed. But amid this tempest, a heart-rending melody began to rise, a song of hope, of love, and of redemption. The spirits drawing upon this melody combined their energies into a blinding beam of light, targeting the Guardian. The entity, overwhelmed, began to fracture, its form disintegrating into nothingness. As dawn broke, the spirits, freed from their eternal torment, began to fade, leaving behind a house that was now truly empty. The synthetic hand, the root of all the chaos, lay in ashes. Ethan, exhausted but alive, emerged from the house. The weight of the tragedies he had witnessed bore down on him, but so did a sense of accomplishment. He had not only freed the lost souls, but had also freed himself from the hand's grasp. But as he walked away, a chilling wind blew, carrying with it a soft whisper. Balance must be restored. The Guardian might have been defeated, but the universe's need for equilibrium remained. The question lingered. What price would be exacted for meddling with the very fabric of time and death? And who would be next to pay it? Ethan, having left the cursed estate behind, tried to return to his everyday life. The memories of his ordeal in the house were vivid, but he hoped time would fade them and he could eventually share his tale as a spooky anecdote. But the universe had other plans. A week later, Ethan began noticing odd occurrences. Shadows danced in the periphery of his vision, and whispers echoed in his ears even when he was alone. Objects around his apartment would move of their own accord, and his dreams were plagued with vivid visions of the spirits he had freed. Ethan thought that was the end. He had paid his dues, faced unspeakable horrors, and emerged victorious. But balance, as he would soon discover, is a fickle thing. One evening, as he was about to drift into sleep, a familiar whisper grazed his ears. Balance must be restored. He awoke to find himself back in the old house, the synthetic hand whole and pulsating with energy on the table beside him. The events that had transpired, the spirits, the Guardian, all seemed like distant memories or perhaps dreams. The realization hit him hard. Time had looped once again, but this time he was alone with the knowledge of what might come, and a chilling certainty that the hand's game was far from over. The cycle had restarted, but the rules had changed. The hand's pull was stronger, the stakes higher, and the challenge even more daunting. As Ethan pondered his next move, one thing became painfully clear. The labyrinth of lost souls was his new reality, and escaping it would be his life's quest. In the shadows of the night, if our tales from unsettling horror stories gave you a fright, press like and let it be known. Subscribe, so you're never alone in this haunting journey, and share, so others too can be wary. Until our next sinister tale, stay dark, dear listener.